Hey, so tonight we're going to talk about something pretty wild, what it was like to live in Edwardian England. And I'm not talking about just any old history lesson. We're going to find out what daily life was actually like for families from different social classes around 1905, when King Edward VII ruled Britain and everything was changing fast. Oh, and if you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. Super curious where you're all listening from, so drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Always blows my mind how people are falling asleep to this all over the world. All right, find that cozy spot, take a nice slow breath and just let your body sink into whatever you're lying on. We're heading back to Edwardian England, and trust me, you're going to be real grateful for that mattress by the time we're done. So congratulations, you just woke up in the Edwardian era. Around 1905, let's say it's a chilly spring morning in northern England, in a seaside town called Morecambe. The first thing you notice is the silence. No traffic noise, no planes overhead, no hum of electronics, just the distant sound of seagulls and maybe a horse-drawn cart passing by outside. Your eyes slowly adjust to the dim light filtering through heavy curtains. The bed beneath you depends entirely on who you are in this world. Are you wealthy, middle class, or one of the millions of working class people just trying to get by? Let's say you're from the upper middle class. Lucky you. You're waking up in a massive four-poster bed with a feather mattress so soft it's like floating on a cloud. The sheets are crisp linen, changed daily by housemaids. Several thick blankets and a heavy eider-down quilt keep you warm since there's no central heating. Your bedroom is spacious with high ceilings. A fire was lit earlier by a servant taking the chill off the room. The walls are covered in William Morris-style floral wallpaper, a soft sage green with delicate pattern. There's expensive wooden furniture, a wardrobe, dressing table and washstand with a porcelain bowl and jug. The rug underfoot is thick and warm when you step out of bed. If you need to pee, good news. As a wealthy Edwardian, you might actually have a bathroom. Indoor plumbing is still a luxury, but the houses of the well-to-do are starting to have actual bathrooms with flushing toilets. No more chamber pots for you. Well, not usually. But what if you were middle class? The bed is still comfortable, but smaller. Maybe a simple wooden frame with a decent mattress. The sheets are clean, but not changed as frequently. Your bedroom is cozy rather than spacious, and the furnishings are good quality, but not extravagant. You might have to share the bathroom with family members, and hot water is a precious commodity that requires planning. And if you were working class, well, that's a whole different story. You might be waking up in a small terraced house in a bed shared with several family members. The mattress is lumpy and thin, stuffed with whatever was affordable: straw, old rags, or if you're lucky, horsehair. The blankets are patched and mended many times. The room is cold, no fire here, and you can see your breath in the air. No bathroom, of course. Working-class families used chamber pots at night, emptying them into outdoor privies in the morning. Imagine that walk of shame in the freezing cold, carrying a pot of your family's waste to dump it down the outdoor toilet. And if nature calls during the day, you're heading to that same outhouse whether it's sunny or pouring rain. That's the first thing to understand about Edwardian England, the massive gap between rich and poor. The lifestyle difference between the wealthy family and their grand house on the hill and the working class family in their terraced house was so extreme they might as well have been living in different centuries. So let's focus on three families: the Taylors, the Goldings, and the Meadows. They've been dropped into Edwardian Morecambe, with houses assigned based on their ancestors' social standing. The Taylors find themselves in the wealthy upper middle class house. The Goldings are in the respectable middle class house, and the Meadows have landed in the working class terraced house. Each family faces the shock of adapting to a completely different way of life. For the Taylor family, the day begins with a knock on the door. It's their lady's maid for Mrs. Taylor and a valet for Mr. Taylor coming to help them dress. And yes, that was actually a thing. Wealthy Edwardians couldn't even put on their own clothes without help. "Good morning, madam," says the lady's maid, drawing back the curtains to let in the pale morning light. "I've laid out your morning dress. Would you like tea before you dress?" Getting dressed as a wealthy Edwardian woman was like gearing up for battle. First came the chemise, basically a simple slip, then the torture device known as a corset. Women were laced so tightly into these things they could barely breathe. The S-bend corset pushed a woman's chest forward and her hips back, creating that classic Edwardian silhouette. Next came the corset cover, then a petticoat or two, then the dress itself, usually a tailored skirt and blouse for morning wear. The skirt swept the floor, which was practical in one way, no need to wash your legs if nobody can see them, but collected all the dirt and horse manure from the streets. Add stockings, boots with dozens of buttons and elaborate hairstyles that required another person's help, and you can see why getting dressed took so long. Men had it slightly easier, but not by much. Formal shirts with detachable collars, cufflinks, waistcoats, pocket watches, perfectly pressed trousers, polished shoes, all of this required assistance from a valet. Now let's peek in on the Goldings in their middle-class home. Mr. Golding is an office clerk who takes his role as head of the household very seriously. There's no valet here. He dresses himself, though his clothes are still formal by today's standards. A suit, collar and tie just to have breakfast at home. Mrs. Golding is helping their youngest child dress while giving instructions to their single servant, a maid-of-all-work who is responsible for cooking, cleaning, and basically everything else. The middle-class Goldings could afford one servant, which was considered the bare minimum for maintaining respectability. And the Meadows family, they're waking up to the harsh reality of working-class life. At 6 a.m, there's a loud knocking on their window. It's the knocker-upper, a person whose job was to wake workers by tapping on their windows with a long stick. No alarm clocks here. The whole family shares one bedroom, with the parents in a small bed and the children on mattresses on the floor. It's freezing cold, no fire has been lit yet, and they dress quickly in the chill. Their clothes are simple, sturdy, and patched in places. No fashion statements here, just practicality. Breakfast shows the same stark differences. The Taylors sit down to a feast served by their butler and footman. Eggs, bacon, kidneys, toast, tea, and coffee. The food is served on fine china with silver cutlery, and the conversation is minimal and proper. The middle-class Goldings have a decent breakfast cooked by their maid, perhaps porridge, toast and tea. Mr. Golding reads the newspaper, while Mrs. Golding supervises the children's manners. "Elbows off the table, Jack," she reminds her son. The Meadows are lucky if they have bread and dripping, congealed fat from roast meat, or porridge. Tea is weak and might be reused several times to save money. There's no time to linger. Mr. Meadows needs to find work for the day as a general labourer, and 17-year-old Saskia has been sent to work as a scullery maid in the Taylor's grand house. After breakfast, the day truly begins. For the wealthy Taylors, there's not much to do. Mr. Taylor retires to his study to read the newspaper or handle correspondence. Mrs. Taylor might write some letters or plan menus with the cook. Their children are whisked away by a nanny who will oversee their education and activities. The wealthier you were in Edwardian England, the less you actually did. Having leisure time was a status symbol. Rich women weren't supposed to work. Their job was to look beautiful, maintain social connections, and supervise the running of the household, which really meant giving orders to the housekeeper, who then gave orders to everyone else. Rich men might have business interests, but many gentlemen of means simply lived off their investments or inherited wealth. Their days were filled with leisure activities, reading, shooting, riding, visiting their clubs in town, or socializing. The children of the wealthy barely saw their parents. They spent most of their time in the nursery with nannies and governesses. Children were expected to be seen and not heard, especially when company was present. I shall endeavour to instruct the children academically, morally, and spiritually, the nanny tells Mr. and Mrs. Taylor as she whisks the children away after they give their mother a quick kiss goodbye. The middle-class Goldings are busier. Mr. Golding heads to his job at the local council office, where he'll spend the day addressing envelopes. It's monotonous work, but it provides a stable income of 57 shillings a week, a decent middle-class salary. Mrs. Golding manages the household with one servant, which means she still does quite a bit of work herself. She needs to plan meals, handle the household accounts, and oversee the cleaning and cooking. The children are her responsibility too. Middle-class families rarely employed nannies. For the working-class Meadows, life is a constant struggle for survival. Mr. Meadows spends his day looking for casual labour work, perhaps hauling rubble or making deliveries. If he's lucky, he'll earn 2 shillings for a day's back-breaking work. Mrs. Meadows has turned their home into a laundry business, taking in washing from neighbours. It's exhausting work, hauling water, boiling clothes in a copper tub, scrubbing, wringing, hanging to dry, and then ironing with heavy flat irons heated on the fire. Daughter Genevieve helps her mother with the laundry. Meanwhile, Saskia Meadows is living the life of a scullery maid at the tailor's house. As the lowest-ranking servant, her work is the dirtiest and most physically demanding. She rises at 5 a.m., lights the kitchen fires, carries coal, scrubs floors, and scours pots and pans. Her hands are raw from the harsh soap and hot water. "You girls are 10 a penny," the stern housekeeper Mrs. McMullen tells her. "You will be chopping, filleting, gutting, plucking, and a lot of scrubbing." By midday, the differences in these families' lives are even more apparent. The Taylors sit down to a formal luncheon served by their staff. The meal is elaborate, several courses of meat, vegetables, and pudding, all served on the finest china. The middle-class Goldings have a simpler lunch, perhaps some cold meat and bread served by their maid. The working-class Meadows might have bread and cheese if they're lucky. Often, working-class families survived on tea and bread for most meals, with perhaps one hot meal in the evening. For Saskia, lunch is a quick bite in the servants' hall, leftovers from the family's meal, eaten standing up because there's too much work to do to sit down properly. Then it's back to the scullery for more scrubbing. You shift a bit, getting more comfortable as the afternoon unfolds. The warm weight of your blankets feels so good as you picture these Edwardian lives playing out before you. In the grand Taylor house, the afternoon is for social calls and leisure. Mrs. Taylor might receive visitors or go out to pay calls herself, leaving her visiting card at the homes of her social circle. Or perhaps she'll take a bicycle ride with her eldest daughter Megan. Cycling was becoming popular among wealthy women as a form of exercise and freedom. It's strange how after being locked in a house you feel like you just got this bit of freedom, Adele Taylor says to her daughter as they pedal through the park, enjoying a rare moment of independence. The middle-class Mrs. Golding spends her afternoon managing the household. There are menus to plan, accounts to balance, and children to supervise. Perhaps she'll do some needlework or read improving literature. Middle-class women were expected to be the moral centre of the home, setting an example of virtue and propriety. And the working class Mrs. Meadows? She's still elbow deep in other people's laundry, her back aching, her hands chapped and raw. There's no rest for the working classes. Every penny counts, and if she doesn't finish the washing, she doesn't get paid. Your breathing naturally slows as you sink deeper into your comfortable bed, your muscles gradually relaxing as the story continues with the Edwardian families going about their very different daily lives. At the Taylor house, young Saskia is given the humiliating task of cleaning the toilets, scrubbing away at the porcelain with a stiff brush. What you're doing is taking off all the urine from inside the lavatory, Mrs. McMullen instructs, as if Saskia hasn't figured that out. The reality of being a servant was far from the romantic version we sometimes see in period dramas. It was exhausting physical labour from dawn until late at night, with barely any time off. Servants worked 14, 16-hour days, usually with only half a day off per week, if that. They lived in the same house as their employers, but inhabited a completely different world, using separate stairs and entrances, eating different food, and living by strict rules. There was a rigid hierarchy among servants too. At the top were the butler and housekeeper, who supervised everyone else. Then came the lady's maid and valet, who served the family directly. Below them were the cook, footman, and housemaids. At the very bottom were the scullery maids, kitchen maids, and hallboys, usually children as young as 12 or 13, who worked for next to nothing. For all this, Saskia will earn 5 shillings a week, a pittance but a crucial contribution to her family's survival. They need 22 shillings a week just to pay the rent and basic bills. As the afternoon wears on, you relax deeper into your comfortable position, feeling the weight of your body sink pleasantly into the mattress. Your muscles are releasing any tension now, melting into that perfect state of comfortable heaviness as we continue exploring these Edwardian lives. For Mr. Meadows, the day has been frustrating. After hours of searching, he's found just one job, moving rubble with a wheelbarrow. It's back-breaking work for which he'll be paid 2 shillings. Not enough to support his family, but better than nothing. I spent the whole day worrying that I can't provide food for them, he confesses. I was a useless parent. I can't look after my daughter. They're all going to be real unhappy. Mr. Taylor, meanwhile, is enjoying an entirely different kind of afternoon. He's taken his son Joseph Clay pigeon shooting at a local stately home. It's a pleasant diversion for a man of means, striding across manicured lawns with a shotgun tucked under his arm, teaching his son the gentlemanly art of shooting. By sheer coincidence, Mr. Meadows is also at the stately home, not as a guest, but as a labourer. He's been hired to shovel manure, and as he works, he catches sight of Mr. Taylor and his son enjoying their leisure. I didn't like being called by my surname, Mr. Meadows thinks to himself. For some reason, I didn't want to raise my eyes to them. I didn't want to look them in the eye. I definitely felt that, which is weird. I wasn't expecting it. The class divide wasn't just about money and material things, it was ingrained in people's minds, in how they carried themselves, how they spoke, how they saw the world. The working class were expected to be deferential, to know their place, and what about the women of the Taylor household? With her husband and son away for the afternoon, Adele Taylor finds herself at loose ends. Despite living in a house of luxury, she feels strangely trapped. I feel a bit resentful of Michael, who's gone out living the life of Riley, can't even be bothered to tell me where he's going or when he'll be back, she confides. I feel like a prisoner in this house. There's this illusion of this powerful woman with the status and this fancy house, and actually it's all lies. For upper-class Edwardian women, the gilded cage was very real. They had status, luxury, and servants, but very little freedom or purpose. They couldn't work, couldn't vote, couldn't even manage their own money. Their role was ornamental, to look beautiful, maintain social connections, and produce heirs. Back at the middle-class Golding house, Mrs. Golding is preparing for her husband's return from work. The children are being kept quiet and clean, the house is tidy, and a hot meal is ready. Middle-class wives were expected to create a peaceful haven for their hard-working husbands. The fire is going, dinner is almost ready, and the children are washed and ready to see their father, she tells the maid, checking that everything is perfect. When Mr. Golding returns from his day at the office, he expects to be treated like the king of his small domain. The middle-class home was his castle, and his word was law. "Why are the stairs still covered in dust?" he demands of his wife as soon as he walks in. "I've been cooking your dinner and cleaning everywhere," she replies. "Please don't speak back to me," he snaps, fully embracing his role as the Edwardian patriarch. In reality, behind the proper facade, middle-class marriages were often partnerships, with wives managing the household budget and making many day-to-day decisions. But publicly, the husband's authority was absolute. For the children, life in an Edwardian household was very different from today. Children were expected to be obedient and respectful, speaking only when spoken to. Physical discipline was common. Spare the rod and spoil the child was the prevailing wisdom. "Jack, would you like to take your elbows off the table, please?" Mr. Golding tells his son during dinner. When the child starts to cry, his father is unmoved. He needs to understand that this was the way it was, he tells his wife. "I would like to think that they will appreciate how important it was to behave properly." For the Meadows children, childhood was even harsher. Working-class children were often put to work as soon as they were physically able. As young as 10 or 11, many left school by the age of 12 to contribute to the family income. They grew up fast, exposed to the harsh realities of life with little protection. As evening approaches, the three families prepare for dinner, each in their own way. For the Taylors, dinner is a formal affair. They dress for the occasion, evening gowns for the women, black tie for the men, and are announced by the butler as they enter the dining room. The table is a work of art, laid with damask linen, fine china, crystal glasses, and silver cutlery. Every place setting has multiple forks, knives, and spoons, each with its specific purpose. The meal consists of numerous courses: soup, fish, meat, vegetables, dessert, cheese, all served by footmen who stand silently behind each diner, anticipating their needs. Conversation is proper and restrained. Topics like politics, money, or anything controversial are avoided. Instead, they discuss art, literature, or harmless gossip about their social circle. The middle-class Goldings also sit down to a proper dinner, though much simpler than the Taylors. Their maid serves the food, perhaps a joint of meat with vegetables, followed by a pudding. Mr. Golding sits at the head of the table, serving the meat, while Mrs. Golding serves the vegetables. The children are expected to eat everything on their plates and not speak unless spoken to. And the Meadows family, their evening meal is simple and sustaining. Perhaps a stew with whatever vegetables they could afford, bread to fill hungry stomachs, and tea. They all eat together in their small kitchen, gathering around the table that serves as the centre of family life. Despite their exhaustion from a day of physical labour, this might be the happiest time for the working-class family. They share the small triumphs and disappointments of their day, supporting each other in their struggle to survive. Basically, we've just got to dig in, dig deep, and get on with it, Mr. Meadows tells his family as they eat their modest meal. And the only way you can do that is by almost slightly switching off. After dinner, the evening entertainments begin, as different as the families themselves. Mr. Taylor leaves his home again to attend the local music hall, where he'll sit in a private box, separated from the common folk in the stalls below. It's lonely up there in his box, watching the lively crowd below enjoying themselves together. I'm here on my own, which is a horrible feeling, knowing that Adele and the children are at home and they would love the show, he reflects. I miss the kids and I miss being around the wife. By coincidence, the Meadows family has scraped together enough money for cheap seats at the same music hall. They sit in the stalls, singing along with the performers, laughing and clapping together. Despite their poverty, they're enjoying a rare evening of entertainment as a family. Meanwhile, Adele Taylor has been tasked with hosting a dinner party for some important guests, a social obligation that fills her with dread. I just don't think I'm pushy enough to associate with people with a law degree from Cambridge University, she says. I'd rather invite the working class people from down the road for a jolly old knees up in here, but I don't think that's going to happen. Social events were serious business for the upper classes. Dinner parties were carefully orchestrated performances designed to maintain and enhance one's social standing. The guest list was strategically created, the menu planned to impress, and the conversation steered to showcase the hosts in the best possible light. The food was extravagant, multiple courses of rich, elaborate dishes prepared by the cook and her staff. An evening like this could cost more than a poor family had to live on for 2 years. In the Golding household, the evening is spent in quiet domestic activities. Mr. Golding might read the newspaper while Mrs. Golding does needlework. The children might be allowed to play quiet games or read improving books. Later, they gather for family prayers before bed, a common practice in middle-class households. As the evening wears on, preparations for bed begin, again vastly different depending on social class. In the Taylor house, the lady's maid helps Mrs. Taylor undress, removing her evening gown, corset and various undergarments. She brushes out her mistress's hair with 100 strokes, then braids it for the night. She lays out a nightgown warmed by the fire. Mr. Taylor is similarly assisted by his valet, who helps him out of his evening clothes and into his nightshirt. The bed has been turned down by a housemaid, a warming pan run between the sheets to take off the chill. The Goldings undress themselves but maintain proper modesty. Mr. and Mrs. Golding have separate bedrooms, common among the middle classes who could afford the space. Nightclothes are worn, and Mrs. Golding wears a nightcap to keep her hair tidy. And the Meadows family, they simply collapse into bed, often still wearing some of their day clothes for warmth. The entire family might share one bedroom, with parents in the bed and children on mattresses on the floor. There's no privacy, no ceremony, just exhausted bodies seeking rest before another day of hard labour. But before they can sleep, there are a few more tasks for the servants in the Taylor household. Saskia, now promoted to housemaid to help with the dinner party, is absolutely exhausted. She's been on her feet since 5 a.m, running up and down stairs, carrying heavy trays, washing endless dishes. Her sister Genevieve, who was brought in as a temporary scullery maid, has managed to break a china cup worth 9 pence, almost a day's wages. This is taken out of our wages on a serious note, Saskia scolds her. We're probably going to be back to nearly zero, so I'm not very happy, and my parents are going to be livid. For servants, such accidents could be financially devastating. They were responsible for any breakages, with the cost deducted from their already meagre wages. The fine china and crystal that the wealthy took for granted represented days or weeks of a servant's salary. The last tasks of the day include laying the fires for the morning, turning down beds and preparing hot water bottles for the family. Only then can the servants retreat to their quarters, usually sparse attic rooms with minimal furniture and no heating. The contrast between upstairs and downstairs was stark. While the family enjoyed spacious bedrooms with fine furniture, fireplaces, and thick curtains, servants slept in cold, bare rooms under the eaves. Their beds were narrow and hard, with thin blankets and flat pillows. The first few days until we got our act together, it was just awful, Mr. Meadows reflects on their working-class experience. And then we kicked in, and we made it work, but we could have easily gone the other way. We've just gone home, actually. As you lie there, feeling the comfortable weight of your own blankets, you might be thinking about how lucky we are today. Central heating, indoor plumbing, washing machines, dishwashers, all the conveniences we take for granted would have seemed like miracles to people in Edwardian times. Even the poorest homes today have amenities that the wealthy of 1905 couldn't imagine. The physical labour that dominated most people's lives has been largely eliminated by technology. The rigid class divisions that determined every aspect of Edwardian life have softened, if not disappeared entirely. And yet, some things remain remarkably similar. Families still gather around tables to share meals and stories. Parents still worry about providing for their children. We still seek entertainment, connection, and meaning in our lives. The Edwardian era was a time of enormous change. The old Victorian values were beginning to crumble. Though slowly, women were starting to demand the right to vote and work. Technology was transforming homes and workplaces. The rigid class system was facing challenges from a growing labour movement. In just a few years, World War I would sweep away much of the old order, accelerating changes that were already underway. The grand houses would lose their armies of servants as young men went off to war and young women found better-paying work in factories. The social certainties that defined Edwardian life would never fully recover. But on this particular evening in 1905, the old order still stands. The three families, Taylor, Golding and Meadows, prepare for sleep in their very different circumstances, unaware of the changes that will transform their world in the coming years. As you relax more deeply into your comfortable position, you can almost feel the rhythms of that bygone era, the slow pace of life without smartphones and constant notifications, the simple pleasures of a family gathered around a fire, the physical satisfaction of work done with your hands. Your breathing naturally slows as you sink deeper into comfort, your muscles unwinding one by one. That delicious heaviness spreads through your limbs as we continue our journey through Edwardian England. In the Taylor house, the children are already asleep in the nursery, watched over by their nanny. The youngest, Alice and Lily, share a room, their faces peaceful in slumber. Joseph has his own room, as befits the male heir of the family. Megan, at 15, is considered almost grown up and has her own small bedroom near her parents. Mrs. Taylor lies awake thinking about her children. She barely sees them during the day. They spend most of their time with the nanny and governesses. I think they're missing us more than we're missing them actually, because we're having quite a lot of fun, Lily had told her mother earlier, not realising how the innocent comment would sting. The separation between parents and children was considered normal in upper-class households. Children were raised by professionals, nannies, governesses, and tutors who were experts in child rearing. Parents maintained a certain emotional distance, believing it would prepare their children for the unsentimental world they would face as adults. In the middle-class Golding home, the parents check on their sleeping children before retiring to their separate bedrooms. Despite the strict discipline he enforced earlier, Mr. Golding feels a pang of tenderness as he looks at his sleeping son. "It was lovely to hold him," he admits. "It makes me feel more like a dad, I'm a dad, not a father." The distinction was significant. A father was a remote authority figure, while a dad suggested a warmer, more emotional relationship. Edwardian fathers were expected to be the former, though many, like Mr. Golding, secretly longed to be the latter. And in the Meadows household, the entire family sleeps in one room, huddled together for warmth. Despite their exhaustion and the hardships of the day, there's a closeness here that the wealthier families lack. Physical proximity creates emotional intimacy, for better or worse. In all three households, darkness falls. Gas lights are turned down or out. Candles are extinguished. The day is done, and tomorrow will bring its own challenges and small triumphs. You shift slightly, finding that perfect spot as moonlight filters through the windows of these Edwardian homes, casting long shadows across the sleeping forms of our three families. The night wraps around them like a blanket, bringing a brief respite from the strict social codes that govern their waking hours. As they dream, perhaps they're free from the constraints of class and convention, free to imagine different lives. As dawn breaks over Edwardian Morecambe, the cycle begins again. The working day starts earliest for those with the least, the servants and the working class. In the Taylor household, the scullery maid is already up at 5 a.m, lighting the kitchen range and boiling water for morning tea. The hallboy is emptying chamber pots and cleaning boots. One by one, the staff begin their carefully choreographed morning routine. The hierarchy below stairs was as rigid as the one above. The butler and housekeeper ruled their respective domains with absolute authority. The butler, Mr. Dowding, oversees the male staff, footman, hallboy, and any outdoor staff like gardeners. The housekeeper, Mrs. McMullen, manages the female staff, ladies' maid, housemaids, kitchen maids, and scullery maids. The position of scullery maid is not, of course, one of high rank, nor is the payment for her services large, was how Mrs. Beeton described it in her famous book of household management. That was quite an understatement. Scullery maids did the dirtiest, most physically demanding work in the house for the lowest pay. For Saskia Meadows, the morning comes too soon. Her bones ache from yesterday's labour, her hands are raw from harsh soap and hot water, and she's desperately homesick. But there's no time for self-pity. She has fires to light, floors to scrub, and countless pots and pans to clean before the cook arrives to start breakfast. You must then set about cleaning the kitchen passages, the pantries, the kitchen and scullery, Mrs. McMullen instructs her. When the chef de cuisine arrives in the kitchen at 7:30, you will be expected to curtsy and bid him good morning. In the Meadows household, the day begins with another loud knock on the window from the knocker-upper. The family rises in the cold, dark room, dressing quickly under the blankets to avoid the chill. There's no time for a leisurely breakfast. Mr. Meadows needs to be out early to find work, and Mrs. Meadows has washing to do. Everything takes so long to do. Everything's a major palaver, Mrs. Meadows sighs as she coaxes the fire to life. And all you do is think about food and tea and warmth. Food, tea, warmth, that's it. That's all you care about. For the middle-class Goldings, the morning is more civilised, but still follows a strict routine. Their single servant, a maid-of-all-work, rises early to light the fires and prepare breakfast. Mr. Golding expects his newspaper and perfectly cooked eggs before he leaves for work. Mrs. Golding plans the day's meals and housekeeping tasks, working alongside their maid. And the wealthy Taylors? They continue to sleep peacefully while the house hums with activity below stairs. They'll be gently awakened with morning tea brought by their personal servants, then dressed and groomed before descending for breakfast. One of the most striking differences between Edwardian life and today was the approach to education. For the upper-class Taylor children, education was tailored to their future roles in society. Boys like Joseph were being prepared for public school, which confusingly means private school in Britain, university, and a career in the professions or managing the family estate. Girls like Meghan were educated in the accomplishments that would make them attractive marriage prospects: music, art, languages, and deportment. Academic subjects were considered less important for girls who were expected to marry well rather than pursue careers. I shall endeavour to instruct the children academically, morally, and spiritually, the nanny assures Mrs. Taylor as she takes the children to the nursery for their morning lessons. The middle-class Golding children attend a local day school. Education was valued in middle-class families as the route to maintaining or improving social position. Boys might be trained for professions like law, medicine, or the church, while girls were still primarily educated to be good wives and mothers. And the working-class Meadows children. In theory, education was compulsory until age 12, but in practice, many working-class children attended school sporadically or left early to contribute to the family income. The education they received was basic: reading, writing, arithmetic, and religious instruction. By mid-morning, the rhythm of the day is established. Mr. Taylor is in his study, perhaps managing his investments or writing correspondence. Mrs. Taylor is meeting with the housekeeper to discuss the day's menus and any household matters requiring attention. The children are in the nursery with their nanny and governess, learning their lessons. Joseph might be struggling with Latin verbs, while Meghan practices the piano. The younger girls, Lily and Alice, are learning simple arithmetic and reading. "We normally eat together, but now we're not allowed to eat together, which is quite weird," Lily observes, missing the family meals they enjoyed in their modern life. Mr. Golding is at his desk at the council office, addressing envelopes with meticulous care. The work is monotonous but respectable, a crucial distinction in Edwardian society. Manual labour, no matter how skilled, was considered lower status than even the most tedious office work. Boring, bored, boring. The only words that are coming to my mind, Mr. Golding thinks as he seals another envelope. So far, I think me doing this job absolutely sums up middle-class Edwardian life. A little bit stuffy, a little bit boring. Mrs. Golding is at home, supervising the maids cleaning and doing her own share of housework. Middle-class women were expected to be hands-on household managers, not just decorative figures like their upper-class counterparts. The Golding children are at school, sitting in straight rows, reciting lessons by rote. Discipline is strict, a ruler across the knuckles for wrong answers or misbehaviour. Education was viewed as a serious business, not something that should be particularly enjoyable. And the Meadows family? They're all working. Mr. Meadows has found a day's labour hauling bricks at a construction site. Mrs. Meadows and daughter Genevieve are doing laundry at home, a gruelling process that takes all day and earns them a few shillings. Doing laundry in 1905 wasn't a matter of tossing clothes in a machine and pressing a button. It was physically demanding work that followed a strict sequence: sorting, soaking, boiling, scrubbing on a washboard, rinsing multiple times, wringing by hand or through a mangle, drying, weather permitting, then ironing with heavy flat irons heated on the stove. I do figure that this was absolute labour of anything but love, Mrs. Meadows reflects as she wrings out another sheet. This was a necessity to just earn money. Saskia continues her duties at the Taylor house, now promoted to housemaid because of her good work. The promotion means slightly better pay and slightly less disagreeable work, though it's still physically demanding. As a housemaid, she's responsible for cleaning bedrooms, dusting, polishing, and helping serve meals. "I've been so proud of both of them," Mr. Meadows says later, reflecting on his daughter's hard work. "I cannot believe the girls have really had to change because if anything, they're probably, they're a little bit more spoilt at home." Lunchtime approaches, and again the differences in the family's experiences are stark. The Taylors enjoy a proper luncheon served by their staff. The middle-class Goldings have a simple but adequate meal. The Meadows might have bread and cheese if they're lucky. Health and hygiene varied dramatically based on social class too. The wealthy Taylors enjoy the luxury of a bathroom with hot and cold running water, still a relative novelty even in upper-class homes. They bathe regularly, have decent nutrition, and access to doctors when needed. The middle-class Goldings have a bathroom, but use it sparingly. Hot water requires effort to heat, so full baths might be a weekly rather than daily occurrence. Still, they maintain good hygiene and can afford medical care for serious illnesses. For the working-class Meadows, bathing is a major undertaking. With no bathroom, they use a tin tub in front of the fire, with water heated in kettles on the stove. The entire family might use the same bath water, starting with the father and ending with the youngest child. By the end, the water is cold and dirty. "We had a tin bath in our bedroom, which was in the attic, and we had a lot of stairs to take our hot water up," recalls one maid from the era. This was true for many working-class families as well. The physical labour just to maintain basic cleanliness was exhausting. Disease was a constant threat in Edwardian England, particularly for the poor. Tuberculosis, typhoid, scarlet fever, and diphtheria claimed many lives. Infant mortality was high. About 1 in 7 babies died before their first birthday, and the rate was even higher in poor areas. Diet varied enormously too. The Taylors enjoy an abundance of rich, elaborate foods, multiple courses for each meal, with meat featuring prominently. Their diet might actually be less healthy than we'd consider ideal today, heavy on meat, sauces and sweets, light on vegetables. The middle-class Goldings eat well, but more simply. Meat might appear once a day rather than at every meal. Vegetables, bread, and porridge form the staples of their diet. The working-class Meadows subsist on the cheapest, most filling foods: bread, potatoes, tea, and perhaps a small amount of meat or cheese. Malnutrition was common among the poor, contributing to their generally poorer health and shorter life expectancy. As the afternoon progresses, the Edwardian social calendar comes into play. For women like Mrs. Taylor, social calls are a crucial part of the day. These weren't just friendly visits, but a complex system of social networking and status maintenance. Women would leave their calling cards at the homes of their acquaintances. If the lady of the house was at home, a brief visit of exactly 15 minutes would ensue, with conversation on approved topics. Never anything controversial or too personal. If she was not at home, which might be a polite fiction rather than literal truth, the card would be left as evidence of the attempted call. I feel a bit resentful of Michael, who's gone out living the life of Riley, can't even be bothered to tell me where he's going or when he'll be back, Mrs. Taylor confides. I feel like a prisoner in this house. Despite their apparent privilege, upper-class women often felt trapped by the rigid social expectations placed upon them. Their days were filled with meaningless social rituals, and their choices were severely limited by convention. For middle-class women like Mrs. Golding, afternoons might include some social calls, but they also involved practical household management. She might do some mending, write letters, or work on the household accounts. Working-class women like Mrs. Meadows had no time for social niceties. Every waking hour was devoted to work. earning money, maintaining the home, caring for children. Leisure was an unaffordable luxury. The Edwardian era was a time of significant political and social change, though the impact varied by class. The women's suffrage movement was gaining momentum with both peaceful and militant campaigns for the right to vote. The labour movement was growing stronger, with workers organising to demand better conditions and pay. The Liberal government was introducing social reforms, including old age pensions and health insurance for workers. But these grand social movements often seemed remote from daily life, especially for those focused on basic survival. Mrs. Meadows has little energy to think about voting rights when she's worried about putting food on the table. The women of the 1900s must have been absolutely rock-like, she reflects as she hangs another sheet to dry. They would have eaten after the rest of their family, especially their children. They had to be up earlier than everyone else. They had to go to bed later than everyone else. It makes me quite emotional, actually. For the Taylor children, the afternoon brings a rare treat, an outing with their nanny to the park. Even this simple pleasure is governed by strict rules of behaviour. The children must walk sedately, speak quietly, and maintain perfect manners at all times. Children should be seen and not heard, was the prevailing philosophy. Any breach of decorum would be swiftly corrected by Nanny, whose authority in matters of child-rearing superseded even that of the parents. The Golding children return from school and have a simple tea of bread and jam before starting their homework. Discipline remains strict. Mr. Golding expects perfect behaviour and diligent study. "Jack, would you like to take your elbows off the table, please?" he reminds his son. When the boy starts to cry, Mr. Golding is unmoved. He needs to understand that this is the way it was. In the Meadows household, the children help with chores as soon as they return home. There's always work to be done, water to be carried, coal to be fetched, younger siblings to be minded. Childhood was brief for the working class. As evening approaches again, the three families prepare for another night. The cycle of meals, entertainment, and bedtime rituals repeats, with each family living out their assigned role in the Edwardian social hierarchy. For the servants in the Taylor household, work continues late into the night. There are dishes to wash, silver to polish, clothes to prepare for tomorrow. Only when the family has retired can the staff begin to think about their own rest. Scullery maids rose very early in the morning, often at 5 or 6 a.m., and after a day of scrubbing and carrying water and heavy pots, she would stumble into her simple attic bed at 10 p.m. One historian notes, that meant a 17-hour workday with barely a break. You find yourself sinking deeper into comfort as you imagine these Edwardian lives so different from your own. Your breathing has naturally slowed, becoming deeper and more rhythmic. The weight of your body feels pleasantly heavy against the mattress. As twilight falls over Edwardian Morecambe, gas lamps and candles are lit in homes across the town. The Taylors' grand house blazes with light, gas chandeliers in the main rooms, oil lamps and candles in bedrooms. The middle-class Goldings use gas lighting more sparingly, supplemented with candles. The working-class Meadows rely primarily on candles, using them cautiously to make them last. Electric lighting was just beginning to appear in wealthy homes, but was still a novelty. Most Edwardian homes were lit in ways that would seem dim and flickering to modern eyes. Imagine trying to read or sew by candlelight, the shadows dancing on the walls, the constant need to trim wicks and refill oil. Your eyelids feel pleasantly heavy as you visualize these scenes from a bygone era. Your muscles relax more deeply with each breath, melting into that perfect state of comfortable rest as our journey through Edwardian England continues with the evening activities of our three families. Evening in Edwardian England brought its own rituals and routines, distinct for each social class. As darkness fell, the warm glow of gas lamps and candles created islands of light in the gathering shadows. In the grand Taylor house, preparations for dinner are well underway. The cook is putting final touches on elaborate dishes in the kitchen, while footmen polish silver and crystal in the dining room. The family is dressing for dinner, an elaborate ritual for the upper classes. For wealthy Edwardian women like Mrs. Taylor, changing for dinner meant a complete transformation. First, they would change their underwear. Yes, even that was different for evening. Then a formal evening gown would be donned with the help of a lady's maid. These gowns were works of art. Silk, satin or velvet, adorned with lace, beading or embroidery. The bodice would be low-cut to display jewellery, while the skirt swept the floor in an elegant train. Hair would be styled elaborately, often with jewelled combs or fresh flowers. Gloves were essential, typically reaching above the elbow. The final touch would be jewellery, diamonds if you had them, or the best you could afford if you didn't. Men had it slightly easier, but still changed into formal evening wear. Black tailcoat, white waistcoat, starched white shirt with wing collar and black bow tie. This formal dress code was non-negotiable in upper-class homes, even when dining alone as a family. In the middle-class Golding home, dinner is a simpler affair. While Mr. Golding might change his jacket, full evening dress would be reserved for special occasions. The meal itself is substantial, but lacks the multiple courses and elaborate presentation of upper-class dining. The Golding's maid serves the food and then withdraws, leaving the family to eat in privacy. Conversation is more relaxed than in the Taylor household, though still respectful. Children are expected to contribute politely when spoken to, but not to dominate the conversation. I think it would be nice to actually be able to talk to my children whenever I fancy talking to my children, Mr. Golding reflects, finding the strict Edwardian parenting style challenging, holding them whenever I want to hold them, cuddling them when they're sad, and just having a conversation would be nice because we're not even allowed to do that. And the working-class Meadows family, their evening meal is eaten together around the kitchen table, often a simple stew or soup that could be kept warm on the stove. Despite their exhaustion, this might be the most relaxed and happy time of their day, a chance to be together without the watchful eyes of employers or the demands of physical labour. After dinner, Edwardian families entertained themselves in ways that would seem quaint to us today. No television, no internet, no smartphones, just conversation, music, games, and books. In the Taylor household, after-dinner activities are segregated by gender. The gentlemen remain at the table for port and cigars, discussing politics, business, or sports, topics considered unsuitable for ladies. The women withdraw to the drawing room for coffee and conversation about safer subjects, fashion, social events, or mild gossip about acquaintances. Later, the men join the women and there might be music, Mrs. Taylor or Megan playing the piano and singing perhaps. Card games like whist or bridge were popular, as were board games like backgammon or chess. Reading aloud was another common entertainment. The works of Dickens, Trollope, or the newer sensation H.G. Wells might be shared, with each family member taking turns to read a chapter. Poetry was also popular. Tennyson, Browning, or Kipling might feature in an evening's entertainment. The middle-class Goldings enjoy similar pastimes, but on a more modest scale. Their piano might be an upright rather than a grand, their books might be borrowed from a lending library rather than purchased, but the patterns of their evening entertainment would be recognisable to their wealthier neighbours. For the working-class Meadows, evening leisure is simpler still. They might sing together. Working-class homes often had a cherished family songbook, if not an actual piano. Storytelling was common, as were simple card games or checkers. If someone in the family could read well, They might share a newspaper or a penny dreadful, cheap, sensational fiction that was affordable even on a tight budget. Reading material varied by class, too. The Taylors might subscribe to serious newspapers like The Times and literary magazines like The Strand. The Goldings might read more popular newspapers like the Daily Mail, founded in 1896 and aimed at the new lower middle class, and magazines like Pearson's or the Windsor Magazine. The Meadows might read The People or Lloyd's Weekly News, papers aimed at a working-class audience with more sensational content and simpler language. Books were expensive. So many middle and working-class families relied on lending libraries. The public library movement was growing, thanks in part to the philanthropy of Andrew Carnegie, who funded over 660 libraries in Britain and Ireland. These provided free access to books for people who could never afford to build their own libraries. As the evening wears on, the youngest children are put to bed first. In the Taylor household, this is entirely the domain of Nanny. She supervises baths, a weekly rather than daily occurrence even for the wealthy, sees that teeth are brushed with salt or soda, toothpaste, as we know it was just becoming available, and hears prayers before tucking the children into bed. Remember that children should be seen and not heard, Nanny reminds them. You do not disturb Mama and Papa downstairs. In the Golding home, Mrs. Golding oversees the children's bedtime routine, perhaps reading them a story from a children's magazine like Little Folks or the Boy's Own Paper. Mr. Golding might come in to say good night, but emotional displays were generally discouraged. For the Meadows children, bedtime is a simpler affair. A quick wash at the kitchen sink, prayers said kneeling by the bed, then into the shared bed or mattress on the floor. Despite the lack of material comforts, there might be a treasured bedtime story or song. One area where the poorest families were as rich as the wealthiest. The adults stay up later, but not much. With no electric light to extend the day artificially, most Edwardians followed the natural rhythms of daylight. Bedtime might be 10 or 11 p.m., especially for those who needed to rise early for work. But before the household can settle for the night, there's the matter of securing the house. In wealthy homes like the Taylors', this was the butler's responsibility. He would check that all doors and windows were locked, that fires were safely banked or extinguished, and that gas lights were turned off. The middle-class Mr. Golding would perform this ritual himself, making his rounds of the house with a candle to check locks and fires. The working-class Meadows had fewer rooms to secure, but were equally careful. Fire was a constant danger in crowded terraced houses, and a single mishap could leave a family homeless. Home security was a serious concern in an age before reliable police protection. Wealthy homes might have elaborate locks and even primitive alarm systems. The butler often slept near the silver storage as an added precaution. Middle-class homes relied on good locks and perhaps a dog. Working-class families had safety in numbers. Crowded streets meant someone was always awake and watching. As the Edwardian day draws to a close, there's one more aspect of life to consider: how people maintained their health. Medical care in 1905 was rudimentary by our standards. There was no National Health Service, no antibiotics, no sophisticated diagnostic tools or surgical techniques. For the wealthy Taylors, illness would mean a visit from a private physician who would come to the house. Treatments were often ineffective or even harmful. Bloodletting was still practiced, and medications frequently contained alcohol, opium, or cocaine. Still, the wealthy had the best care available and could afford nursing and convalescence. The middle-class Goldings might also call a doctor, though perhaps a less prestigious one. They would be careful about the expense, as medical bills could quickly deplete savings. Home remedies would be tried first, with professional help sought only when necessary. For the working-class Meadows, illness was a calamity. A day of work lost was a day's wages lost. Doctors were unaffordable for many, so patent medicines and folk remedies were the first recourse. Charity hospitals and dispensaries existed, but treatment there could be rudimentary and humiliating. Many poor people suffered and even died from conditions that would be easily treatable today. The gap in life expectancy between rich and poor was stark. A boy born into a professional family in 1905 could expect to live to 54. One born to a labourer might live only to 38. Infant mortality was high across all classes, but significantly higher among the poor. Common diseases like tuberculosis, pneumonia, and typhoid claimed many lives. Children faced threats from diphtheria, scarlet fever, and measles. Even a simple infected cut could lead to blood poisoning and death before the discovery of antibiotics. As our three families settle for the night, they face these realities with the resilience that characterized the Edwardian era. They couldn't know that their world stood on the brink of unprecedented change. In less than a decade, the Great War would sweep away many of the certainties they took for granted. The rigid class system would be shaken by the democratic experience of the trenches. The servant class would be decimated as young men died in France and young women found better-paying work in factories and offices. The political landscape would be transformed by universal suffrage and the rise of the Labour Party. But on this night in 1905, the future is unknown. The Taylors retire to their separate bedrooms, helped by their personal servants. The Goldings check on their sleeping children before going to their own rooms. The Meadows huddle together in their shared bedroom, finding warmth and comfort in proximity. As you relax deeper into your comfortable bed, feeling the pleasant weight of your blankets, you might reflect on how much has changed in just over a century. The material comforts we take for granted, central heating, hot water on demand, refrigeration, washing machines, indoor plumbing, more, would seem like miracles to even the wealthiest Edwardians. Our social freedoms would be equally astonishing. The idea that people could choose their own careers regardless of birth, marry for love across class lines, or live as they please without rigid social conventions would be revolutionary to our Edwardian ancestors. Yet, some things remain remarkably similar. The love of parents for children, the comfort of family gatherings, the pleasure of stories shared in the evening, the fundamental human experiences transcend time and social convention. In the Taylor house, the last lights are being extinguished by servants. Mrs. Taylor lies in her comfortable bed, thinking about her children and wondering if the strict separation is really necessary. Mr. Taylor, in his adjacent but separate bedroom, finds himself missing the simple family closeness they enjoy in modern times. "I miss the kids, and I miss being around the wife," he admits to himself as he drifts towards sleep. There's any such word as the Edwardian family. In the Golding house, Mr. Golding makes a small rebellion against Edwardian convention. He slips into his son's bedroom and gives him a gentle kiss on the forehead, a display of affection that would be considered inappropriate for a proper Edwardian father. The Edwardian father needs to understand that it's not such a bad thing sometimes to show a bit of emotion, he thinks as he watches his son sleep. And in the Meadows household, despite their poverty and exhaustion, there's a closeness that the wealthier families might envy. They may lack material comforts, but they have an emotional intimacy born of shared hardship and physical proximity. "I think it pushed us to the maximum," Mr. Meadows reflects. "I think as a family, we did really well." As the night deepens over Edwardian Morecambe, silence falls on Albert Road. The only sounds are the distant crash of waves on the shore, the occasional clip-clop of a late-night cab, and the soft breathing of sleepers in their beds. The gulf between the classes remains vast, but in sleep all are equal. The wealthy tailors in their silk nightclothes, the respectable Goldings in their cotton nightshirts, and the working-class Meadows in whatever keeps them warm. All dream, all rest, all prepare for another day in the complex, stratified world of Edwardian England. Your breathing slows naturally as you imagine these scenes from a bygone era. Your body feels deliciously heavy against the mattress, muscles relaxing one by one. The gentle weight of your blankets feels so comforting, so secure. You shift slightly, finding that perfect position as we continue our journey through this fascinating time in history. The next morning dawns crisp and clear over Morecambe Bay. The routine begins again. Servants rising first, preparing the house for the day. Fires are lit, water is heated, breakfast is prepared. The rigid schedule of Edwardian life provides a framework that everyone understands and follows without question. For all its inequalities and restrictions, there was a certainty to Edwardian life that some might envy today. Everyone knew their place and their role. The rules, though sometimes stifling, were clear. There was a predictability to daily life that offered its own kind of comfort. Yet beneath the surface, change was brewing. Women were beginning to demand the vote and greater independence. Workers were organising for better conditions. New technologies were transforming homes and workplaces. The old certainties were already beginning to crumble, though few could see it clearly. You settle deeper into your comfortable position, feeling your body grow heavier and more relaxed with each breath. That delicious sensation of sinking into the mattress spreads through your limbs as we continue following our Edwardian families through their very different daily lives. As we continue our journey through Edwardian England, the rhythms of daily life play out across all three households. The contrast between their experiences reveals so much about this fascinating period of history caught between the Victorian past and the modern future. For our three families, the days follow their established patterns. The wealthy tailors live lives of leisure and social obligation, supported by an army of servants who remain largely invisible to them. The respectable middle-class Goldings balance work and propriety, maintaining appearances while managing with just one servant. The working-class Meadows struggle for daily survival, their lives defined by physical labour and the constant worry about making ends meet. Yet, as the week progresses, each family begins to adapt to their situation, finding small ways to cope with the constraints of Edwardian life. In the Taylor household, Mrs. Taylor and her eldest daughter Megan have discovered an unexpected freedom in bicycle riding. The bicycle had been revolutionary for women's independence, allowing them to travel unchaperoned and necessitating more practical clothing. It's strange how after being locked in a house you feel like you just got this bit of freedom, Adele Taylor says as they pedal through the park. I want to run around the park like, yeah, free, and I'm kind of just not wanting to go back home. For women accustomed to the freedoms of the 21st century, the restrictions placed on Edwardian women were particularly challenging. They couldn't vote, couldn't manage their own money if married, and were expected to centre their lives around home and family. The bicycle represented a small but significant crack in these limitations. Mr. Taylor, too, is finding Edwardian life challenging in unexpected ways. Despite his privileged position, he misses the casual family closeness of modern times. After attending the music hall alone, he feels a surprising emptiness. "I miss the kids and I miss being around the wife," he admits. The emotional distance that characterized upper-class family relationships leaves him feeling isolated despite his material comfort. In the middle-class Golding household, Mr. Golding is struggling with the role of the stern Edwardian father. His instinct to comfort his crying son conflicts with the expectation that he maintain strict discipline and emotional distance. I would like to think that they will appreciate how important it was to behave properly 100 years ago, he says, trying to justify his strictness, and that sometimes we don't really behave as politely and as nicely as children used to. But in private moments, he rebels against these constraints. One evening, he holds his young son Jack, something the perfect Edwardian father would rarely do. It was the first time I think I've held him, he reflects. It was lovely. It was really lovely. It makes me feel more like a dad, you know? I'm a dad, not a father. The distinction was significant in Edwardian times. A father was a remote authority figure, while a dad suggested a warmer relationship. Mr. Golding is discovering that the emotional restraint expected of Edwardian men comes at a high personal cost. For the working-class Meadows family, Edwardian life is physically grueling but emotionally straightforward. Despite their poverty, they maintain a closeness that the wealthier families might envy. Working together for survival creates bonds that transcend the material hardships they face. I think it pushed us to the maximum, Mr. Meadows reflects. I think as a family, I think we did really well. Mrs. Meadows has gained a new appreciation for the resilience of working-class Edwardian women. The women of the 1900s must have been absolutely rock-like, she says, emotion in her voice. They would have eaten after the rest of their family, especially their children. They had to be up earlier than everyone else. They had to go to bed later than everyone else. Their daughters, Saskia and Genevieve, have surprised themselves with their ability to adapt to service and hard labour. Initially horrified by the demands of being a scullery maid, Saskia has earned a promotion to housemaid through her diligent work. I just know that I have to get on with it now, so I might as well do it in a nice fashion, she decides, finding an inner strength she didn't know she possessed. As the week draws to a close, all three families have gained insights into their ancestors' lives that books alone could never provide. They've experienced firsthand the material conditions, social expectations, and daily routines that shaped Edwardian life. The Taylors have learned that wealth and privilege came with their own constraints. The emotional distance between family members, the rigid social obligations, and the performative nature of upper-class life all took a toll on genuine human connection. After living their life, I feel more detached from my ancestors, Mr. Taylor reflects. It's nice to do all the great things and do the stuff, but I don't want to do things on my own. I really don't. I want to do things with my family. The Goldings have discovered that middle-class respectability was built on a foundation of strict conformity. Every aspect of life, from dress to behaviour to household management, was governed by rules designed to maintain social position. We're bloody lucky, Mr. Golding says, thinking about his ancestors. We're lucky to be here, and we're lucky to be how we are. And the Meadows family has gained a profound respect for the hardiness of their working-class forebears. My ancestors, I don't know how they must have lived like this, Mr. Meadows says. My family's found it difficult when there's 4 of us in this house, and we're only here for 5 days. For them to live like this for the rest of their life must be very difficult, and it's quite heartbreaking. As you feel your body growing heavier and more relaxed, sinking pleasantly into your comfortable bed, let's reflect on what we can learn from these Edwardian lives. The Edwardian era was a time of transition, caught between the Victorian past and the modern future. It was the last gasp of an old order that would soon be swept away by war, technological change, and social upheaval. In many ways, it represents the childhood of our modern world. The rigid class system that defined Edwardian life has largely disappeared, though economic inequality persists in different forms. The gender roles that constrained both men and women have become more fluid, allowing greater freedom of expression and choice. The technologies that were just emerging then, electricity, automobiles, telephones, have transformed daily life beyond recognition. Yet some aspects of human experience remain constant across time. Family relationships, though expressed differently, matter just as much. The desire for security, connection, and meaning drives us just as it drove our Edwardian ancestors. The pleasures of good food, engaging entertainment, and comfortable rest are universal. Your breathing deepens naturally as you consider these connections across time. Your body feels pleasantly heavy now, sinking deeper into the mattress with each breath. That comfortable weight spreads through your limbs, a delicious relaxation flowing from head to toe. As our story of Edwardian life draws to a close, the three families prepare for their final night in 1905. In the Taylor house, the elaborate bedtime rituals are performed one last time. Mrs. Taylor is helped out of her evening gown by her lady's maid, her hair unpinned and brushed, her face cleansed with cold cream. Mr. Taylor's valet assists him with his nighttime routine in his separate bedroom. Their children are tucked into bed by Nanny, perhaps with a little more affection than strict Edwardian practice would allow. The youngest, Lily and Alice, whisper together in their shared room, reviewing the strange experience of living as their ancestors did. "I think when we go back home, I'm going to appreciate Mommy and Daddy more," Lily says softly. "I miss eating together and playing games and Daddy reading stories." In the middle-class Golding house, Mrs. Golding checks that the fire is banked safely for the night while Mr. Golding locks the doors and windows. Their children are already asleep, tired from a day of proper Edwardian behaviour and schoolwork. Mr. Golding pauses by his son's bed, breaking Edwardian convention to stroke the boy's hair gently. "I'm looking forward to actually being able to talk to my children whenever I fancy talking to my children," he thinks, "holding them whenever I want to hold them, cuddling them when they're sad, and just having a conversation." And in the working-class Meadows household, they huddle together in their shared bedroom, finding warmth in proximity. Despite the hardships they've endured, there's a satisfaction in having survived, in having met the challenge of living as their ancestors did. I mean, the real them. The real people who actually lived like this. It was the only life they knew, Mr. Meadows reflects. They didn't know any different, so I guess you just get on with it. As you breathe slowly and deeply, your eyelids begin to feel heavier. Each blink lasts a little longer, your eyes wanting to stay closed just a bit more each time. That's it, just allowing that natural heaviness to increase. Darkness falls over Edwardian Morecambe for the last time for our families. Gas lights are turned down, candles extinguished. The only sounds are the distant crash of waves on the shore and the soft breathing of sleepers in their beds. Your own breathing has found that perfect rhythm now, slow and deep and regular. With each exhale, you sink a little deeper into relaxation, your body becoming more and more comfortable. The Edwardian era itself was like a brief twilight, a moment of beautiful golden light before the long night of war and upheaval that would transform Britain forever. In 1905, few could imagine the changes that lay just ahead: the Great War, the Russian Revolution, the collapse of empires, the rise of new technologies and social movements. Our three families, nestled in their beds on Albert Road, stand at the threshold of this new world without knowing it. They are living through the end of one era and the beginning of another, just as we all do in our own lives, rarely recognizing the historical significance of our own times until long afterward. Your thoughts are becoming more distant now, gently drifting like clouds across a summer sky. Each thought is lighter than the last, less distinct, less demanding of your attention. As dawn breaks on the final day in 1905, our families will return to their modern lives, carrying with them new understanding of their ancestors and new appreciation for the freedoms and comforts they enjoy. They've glimpsed a world both familiar and foreign, recognizing parts of themselves in these Edwardian lives while also seeing how much has changed. The child who grew up in the grand house might have become a soldier in the trenches of the Western Front. The respectable clerk might have lost his sons to war and his certainties to changing times. The labourer and laundress might have seen their children rise to the middle class as new opportunities opened after the war. History isn't just a series of events in textbooks, it's the lived experience of ordinary people, each with their own hopes, fears, struggles, and joys. Our ancestors were not so different from us in their fundamental humanity, though the world they inhabited shaped them in ways both subtle and profound. Your body feels wonderfully heavy now, completely supported by your bed. Each muscle has let go of tension, melting into perfect relaxation. That pleasant weight makes it seem as though you're sinking gently into the mattress, held in its comforting embrace. As you drift deeper towards sleep, imagine the night sky over Edwardian Morecambe. Without electric light pollution, the stars would have been brilliantly clear, a canopy of twinkling lights stretching from horizon to horizon. Perhaps our three families, looking up at those same stars from their different circumstances, felt momentarily connected to something larger than themselves, just as we do when we gaze at the night sky. Your eyelids are so heavy now, wanting to stay closed. Each blink lasts longer than the one before, your eyes remaining shut for longer periods. That's right, just allowing them to close whenever they want to, enjoying that comfortable feeling. The world of 1905 has faded into history, but echoes of it remain in our language, our architecture, our social structures, and our family stories. We carry the past with us, whether we recognize it or not, just as we carry the genetic legacy of our ancestors in our very cells. The Edwardian era, with its stark contrasts between luxury and poverty, its rigid social codes and its technological transformations, offers us a mirror in which to see our own time more clearly. The inequalities, technologies, and social changes they grappled with take different forms today, but the fundamental questions remain. How do we live together? How do we balance tradition and progress? How do we create meaning in our brief time on Earth? Your breathing has found that perfect sleep rhythm now, deep and slow and regular. With each breath, you drift a little closer to that peaceful threshold between wakefulness and dreams. As our story ends, imagine our three families returning to their modern lives, forever changed by their brief immersion in their ancestors' world. They step back into the present with new eyes, seeing both the gains and losses that time has brought. We've had the most wonderful foods I've never tasted in my life before, like being in the fanciest restaurant I've ever been, Mrs. Taylor reflects, and I haven't been able to enjoy it because the family haven't been with us. I think it would be nice not to turn on the TV all the time, Mrs. Golding thinks, remembering the Edwardian evenings of conversation, music, and games. I spent the whole day worrying that I can't provide food for them, Mr. Meadows says, understanding for the first time the crushing weight his ancestors carried. I was a useless parent. I can't look after my daughter. They're all going to be real unhappy. These insights about family connection, simple pleasures, and the fundamental need for security transcend time. They speak to us across the century that separates us from our Edwardian ancestors, reminding us of what matters most. You're drifting now, floating peacefully in that perfect state between wakefulness and sleep. Your thoughts are becoming more distant, like whispers from another room. Your body is completely relaxed, every muscle at rest. The Edwardian era, like all historical periods, eventually gave way to new realities. The certainties of 1905 would be shattered by the Great War, transformed by new technologies and challenged by changing social attitudes. Yet something of that world remains with us in our architecture, our literature, our social structures, and our collective memory. As you sink deeper towards sleep, imagine the continuity of human experience across time. The Edwardian mother who tucked her children into bed with a goodnight kiss, the father who worried about providing for his family, the child who looked up at the stars and wondered what the future might bring. In the most fundamental ways, they were like us, loving, hoping, fearing, dreaming. Your eyelids are too heavy to open now, your body too comfortable to move. Each breath carries you closer to sleep, each heartbeat a gentle rhythm lulling you toward dreams. The past is never truly gone. It lives in our family stories, our cultural inheritance, and the physical world we've built upon the foundations laid by previous generations. Our Edwardian ancestors would be astonished by our technology, confused by our social norms, but they would recognize our humanity, our need for connection, meaning, and security. As you drift off to sleep, carry with you this connection to the past. Like our three families returning from their Edwardian adventure, you've glimpsed another world, another way of being. Though separated by time, we share with our ancestors the fundamental experience of being human, with all its joys, sorrows, challenges, and triumphs. Your breathing is the perfect rhythm for deep, restful sleep now. Your mind is quiet, your body completely at ease. There's nothing you need to do, nothing you need to think about. Just allow yourself to drift deeper and deeper into peaceful slumber. The stars that shone over Edwardian Morecambe still shine tonight, connecting us to that distant time. As you sleep, you join the great human family across time and space, all of us dreaming beneath the same sky. Sleep well, sleep deeply, and when you wake, perhaps you'll carry with you some small insight from our journey through Edwardian England, some appreciation for our modern comforts, some understanding of our historical inheritance, some connection to the lives that came before our own. Good night, sweet dreams, safe passage to the land of sleep.